next all-new, all-in Martha.
Monday at 3 on K2.
K2, the spirit of the Northwest.
This week, law, politics, and war in Washington. Senate Leader Bill Frist investigated.
An examination of the facts will demonstrate that I acted properly.
House Leader Tom DeLay indicted.
I have done nothing wrong.
New York Times reporter Judy Miller released.
Am I happy to be free and finally able to talk to all of you?
And the military's top brass raised new doubts about Iraq.
Iraqi armed forces will not have an independent capability for some time.
Our headliner, the four-star general on the ground, George Casey. Plus, an exclusive interview with Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer on his controversial approach to deciding cases, his new chief, and the court.
It's helpful, not harmful, to have a court made up of people of diverse backgrounds.
On our roundtable, George Will, Terry Moran, and Linda Douglas debate a wild week in politics. Then, Lynn Cheney's history lessons.
Freedom isn't some kind of inevitable inheritance that we have.
And as always, the Sunday Funnies.
And today, the New York Times reported Judith Miller, she is released from jail. They had to release her to make room for Tom DeLay.
From ABC News, This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Now, reporting from the ABC News studios in Washington, George Stephanopoulos.
Good morning, everyone. It was one of those weeks here in Washington where everything seemed to happen all at once. So we have a lot of ground to cover today. And our first guest is the commanding general of American forces in Iraq, General George Casey. Thank you for joining us. I understand this is your first Sunday appearance since you've been stationed in Iraq.
It is, George. Thanks. Nice to be here with you.
Well, welcome. I know that you and many other top military officials believe that one of the reasons that so many Americans are so sour on the war is that the American media is only telling one side of the story. That's your view. So let's address that right at the beginning. What's the single most positive success story that Americans don't know about?
Well, I'd say there's two very positive successes that I think they may be aware of, but I don't believe that they are aware of the significance. And the two things that we have to do the best in is the political process and the building of the Iraqi security forces. And the political process is very much on track. The Iraqis have met all their milestones. 98% of the Iraqis eligible to register to vote are registered. The polls that we're seeing say 80 to 90% of the Iraqis intend to participate in this referendum and this election. And the most important change since the January elections is that the Sunni population is coming forward and saying that they will participate in this referendum and in this election in large numbers. Just one little example here. In Mosul, one of the main Sunni areas, only about 30,000 people voted there last year. This year, during the registration process, 100,000 people registered, and another 300,000 went by just to see if their name was on the list.
But let's address that issue of political progress, because we've seen all these marks get hit. You're right, there were elections in January. The Constitution was drafted a couple of weeks late in August, but it was drafted. Yet you've said that that Constitution has not turned out to be the national compact that we had hoped, and in fact, the security situation has gone backwards or is more uncertain than it was before the Constitution was drafted. So that would show at a minimum that either we're not really making this political progress or there's a disconnect between the political progress and the security situation.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it quite that way. I would say that the Iraqis built a constitution, they put that together themselves, and they will go out and have the opportunity to vote on that constitution. And some will vote yes, and some will vote no. And that's a very positive thing for a group of people who have lived under the tyranny of Saddam Hussein for 3.5 decades.
Excuse me, sir, but not everyone agrees with that. The United Nations, especially United Nations report released in Newsweek today that cautions that the new Constitution is a model for the territorial division of the state. And I want to show our viewers something that the International Crisis Group reported this week. It's a well-respected, nonpartisan organization, and it says that without a strong U.S.-led initiative to assuage Sunni Arab concerns, the Constitution is likely to fuel rather than dampen the insurgency, encourage ethnic and sectarian violence, and hasten the country's violent breakup. And I think the concern here is that even if these Sunnis come out in great numbers, or maybe especially if they come out in great numbers, yet still lose, it's going to cement in their resentment?
That, I think, is fair. It could happen. The other thing that could happen, and I'm not sure either one of those articles points it out, is that a lot of the implementation of these measures, particularly the federalism measures, have been kicked into this next assembly. And if the Sunni participate in the elections, they will have a heck of a lot more influence in the implementation of these
we saw the Sunnis
processes than they had in the actual drafting of the Constitution.
Remember,
they didn't vote. They boycotted those elections.
They didn't vote the last time, yet Sunnis were brought into the drafting process, and yet we just couldn't reach an accommodation. Let me, though, move on to...
Oh, I'm sorry. Could I go back to the second thing? That
absolutely.
Go back to the development of the Iraqi security forces. And we have made great progress with the Iraqi security forces over the last several years. I think we're up over 190,000 trained and equipped now. I mentioned the other day, yesterday, in May, there were only about 160 combined and independent Iraqi operations at the company level and above, operations involving around 100 soldiers. In September, that number is up to over 1,300. So these are 1,300 operations of more than 100 soldiers that Iraqis are either participating with us in or are doing independently. And that's a huge jump. And our strategy of putting transition teams, coalition soldiers, and small elements with these Iraqi battalions has paid great dividends for us into giving us insight and visibility into those forces, into their preparedness, and into enabling them to operate with us better. So we're quite pleased with the way that is going.
It's sure you know. You took some heat on Capitol Hill this week when you testified to the Congress and said the number of Iraqi battalions that are ready to fight on their own had actually slipped from 3 to 1, and that's going from about 2,100 soldiers to 700 soldiers since May. If they're moving backwards, how is that progress?
Yeah, and that is, we went through that at the press conference we had the other day. Let me just try to explain that a little bit. First of all, as I said, the development of the Iraqi security forces is very much on track. When we set this out, we laid out a readiness assessment for Iraqi security forces that supported our strategy. And so what we said, one of the elements of our strategy is anything we do with the Iraqis has to be sustainable by them as we draw down and as we leave. So we set a very, very high standard for the first level. They have to be able to conduct operations independently without our support. And we know, because you don't build an army to that level overnight, that it's going to be some time for them to get there. And we focused our attention on what we call the second level, level 2. That is the level where Iraqi security forces, with our teams and with our enabling support, medical evacuation, fire support, intelligence support, they take the lead in conducting operations across Iraq. And there's already places in Baghdad where there are Iraqi brigades leading operations in Iraq. That's where we're focused. And I said in the press conference the other day, in a year from now, if there's not more battalions in level 1, I'll be concerned. Right now, I'm not. I'm concerned about level 2, and we're making very good progress there.
Back in August, President Bush at his Crawford Ranch laid out a very succinct summary of success in Iraq and our strategy. Here it is.
As Iraqis stand up, we will stand down. And when that mission of defeating the terrorists in Iraq is complete, our troops will come home to a proud and grateful nation.
Now, you pointed out in your testimony this week that over the last century, the average length of these insurgencies has been around 9 years, and there's no reason to think, you said, that Iraq will do any better in defeating the insurgents than that. So it would follow then, if we're going to stay until the terrorists are defeated completely, as President Bush said, American troops are going to be there for several years. Isn't that right?
Yes, but that's precisely the element of the strategy. The strategy that the President just mentioned and that we've articulated is one that is designed to enable the Iraqis to take charge of their future. And our strategy is to get them into the lead and prepare them to deal with the counterinsurgency as we progressively draw our forces back.
I understand that, but is the strategy of the United States now to stay until the terrorists are defeated, or to simply give the Iraqis a fighting chance?
No, I think the President is quite clear, and we've been also quite clear on what we're trying to do. And we're trying to build an Iraq that is at peace with its neighbors, that's an ally in the war on terror, that has a representative government that respects the human rights of all Iraqis, and has security forces that can maintain domestic order and deny Iraq as a safe haven for terror. When we get there, then I think you'll see the U.S. forces be gone or down at levels that you would have in a normal security relationship with another sovereign country.
But that's 7-8 years away.
I think what you're going to see is we will progressively draw down the numbers of U.S. forces that are required to support the Iraqis in executing that strategy over the next several years.
Another element in the strategy, of course, is keeping the American public on board. And I want to show our viewers some of the footage from the march last week here in Washington. Over 100,000 people came to protest the war. And I just wanted to ask you, you're sitting there in Iraq, you're talking to your troops every day. When they see these protests, when they see that majorities of the country believe we're not winning the war, believe that we're bogged down in Iraq, believe that it's not been worth it, what is your reaction?
I specifically asked that question to a group of soldiers before I came over there. So what impact does this have on you? And here's what they said. They said, tell the people back home, don't speak for us. 9/11 won't happen again. We'll beat them here. That was their message back to the people of the United States.
But every military officer knows from Vietnam that if you don't have the public behind you, you can't sustain the war effort. Do you have a strategy to turn the American public around?
I think we will contribute to a strategy that by the government to continue to apprise the American people about realistically what is happening on the ground in Iraq. And as I've said many times, this is hard business. We are in a tough fight, but we should not be afraid of that fight. We as Americans, we've been in tough fights before to protect democracy and to protect our way of life. Troops aren't afraid of this. The military is not afraid of this. And we can do this with the Iraqi people.
Well, General Casey, thanks for sending that message with us today.
Thank you very much.
Up next, in a rare and exclusive interview, Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer speaks out.
The court is not the CIA. The court is not a secret.
And later, the roundtable debates the investigations of Bill Frisk, Tom DeLay, Louis Libby, and Karl Rove. How far will they go? Will anyone go down? And what does it all mean for the GOP majority in Washington?
This week with George Stephanopoulos. Brought to you by Charles Schwab. Investing? Talk to someone who actually listens. Talk to Chuck. Charles Schwab.
I don't know. To me, a dog's a dog. You got this one stock, you stare at it every month thinking it's going to come back, but it just sits there. It'd be nice if your quarterly report had some kind of analysis or something to help you decide when to move on or not. Like a dog meter, you know?
It may be as simple as a broken bone, or as complex as a heart that stops beating. But every day, our doctors are there, helping us heal.
These everyday heroes make the world better. They show us how strong we are when we're in it together.
Did you feel that? Something is coming. A force from overseas, perhaps? A new competitor? Or change itself? Can't you feel it?
Feel what, Sir Arthur?
Am I alone in this?
Change is coming. IBM Business Consulting helps you manage it.
The Feel-Good Phenomenon. Extreme Makeover Home Edition. All new ABC tonight.
Charles? Scott?
Gina Davis is Commander-in-Chief. All new Tuesday, 9/8 Central, only on ABC.
When Chief Justice John Roberts opens his first Supreme Court session tomorrow, the court's junior justice will be starting his 12th term. Stephen Breyer joined the court in 1994, and since then he's increasingly become a swing vote, most recently on those split decisions over the Ten Commandments.
With President Bush poised to nominate Justice Sandra Day O'Connor's replacement as early as tomorrow, Breyer's role could become even more pivotal. And now, Breyer is lifting the veil on the debates that divide the court and affect all our lives in a new book, Active Liberty. It lays out Breyer's legal philosophy and offers a pointed response to his most consistent Supreme Court adversary, Justice Antonin Scalia. The book has already sparked a lively debate in the legal world. And this morning, Breyer is taking the rare step of reaching out to a broader national audience. He agreed to give this week his only televised interview from his home in Cambridge.
Justice Breyer, thank you very much for doing this.
Yes, sir.
The book is called Active Liberty. Let me take a shot at laying out, summarizing the thesis and have you elaborate. Basically, you're saying that judges, when they decide cases, ought to try to enhance active liberty, which means enhancing the ability of ordinary people to participate in government processes.
Not every case, but some cases, yes.
You write in the book that you're concerned that the current court may be underemphasizing active liberty.
That's exactly the right word. I mean, sometimes I'm in the majority, sometimes I'm in dissent. And often in certain important cases, campaign finance, for example, where the court has been divided, I think it helps. It doesn't dictate, but it helps to refer back to the basic general principle underlying the document.
So you do think the current court is underemphasizing it?
No, that's one of the points.
Let me get you to respond to some of your critics. One of them is Representative Tom Feeney, a member of the House Judiciary Committee. He says nobody but a subjective, biased judge can determine what active liberty means. And he calls your approach jurisprudential mysticism.
Well, everyone can read this and come to any conclusion they want about it. That's fine if that's his view. It's not my view.
But how do you guard against this idea that it's subjective?
That's a very good question, and what I try to do in the book is to show that actually a system that refers back in the judge's mind a framework to basic purposes and then looks at consequences in light of those purposes is more likely to lead to objective decision-making, is less likely to lead to subjective decision-making, that systems that tie themselves just to text or just to history.
Probably the justice most known for textualism, originalism, is Justice Scalia. And he says, listen, we have to steer clear of intent, we have to steer clear of looking at consequences and pay attention to the text. Your book is looking in a very different direction.
It does look in a different direction, but the main point of the book is to tell people who'd like to read it that basically when judges decide cases, not all, but many, they must look back to basic purposes and consequences. Those aren't the only things, but I want to explain why I think it's necessary to do that, and that means that I have to explain originalism, textualism, why that doesn't, in my opinion, work very well.
Well, why doesn't it?
Because in close cases, when you say go look at history, the history doesn't tell you. The people who wrote the Constitution really didn't think that there would be an internet. They went to Philadelphia Hall in carriages. They went there with horses. They didn't go there in automobiles. They thought the Commerce Clause would apply in the future, but not just to horses. And they thought it would, they didn't dream of automobiles. They didn't dream of television, and they didn't dream of internet, computers, all the things that affect our privacy, for example. So there's not going to be a way to look back and say, what did Thomas Jefferson say about the application of the First Amendment to this particular instance, or to most of modern society where you're talking about developments that didn't then exist.
The framers were also concerned, they were a little worried about too much democracy.
Yes, they were. But they were worried about a government that might infringe basic liberties. So the Constitution has in it protection of basic liberties. That's why they put in the Bill of Rights, to protect you or me or any other citizen, any other person in the United States from the government that might take away free speech or that might take away privacy rights or might take away some other rights. That's part of it. But the other part, and indeed what I think of as a central idea, is that they wanted institutions that would allow people to shape their own towns.
I'm still having trouble figuring out where specifically this idea is based in the Constitution.
It's based in Articles 1 through 7. They create a.
That's all, 1 through 7.
Yeah, that's the Constitution, and the rest is the amendments. And what are the first 3 words of the Constitution?
We the people.
We the people. That's right. We the people, not we the states. So not just omitted, but it's we the people that are creating the document. And what kind of a document is it? It is a document designed to create institutions that will allow people themselves to decide what their communities, what their states, what their towns, what their national government will be like. What rules do they want? What practices do they want to govern themselves? And if people don't understand that, if our children don't understand it, if our grandchildren now, and I do have grandchildren now, they're very sweet too, but if they don't understand that, it won't be there.
Judges seem to be more in play politically than any time in recent history. You see, movements in the House of Representatives to impeach judges for decisions they've made. Leading politicians say, judges are out of control right now. Activist judges are out of control. How do you respond to those who say that the theory you're enunciating is one more example of that?
Well, I'd say it isn't. I'd say that traditional view is a view that judges have followed from day one, that most of them, many of them, that it is more likely to keep judges under control, if you like, to keep them rational, to keep them transparent, to explain how, to force them to explain how what they're deciding is tied back to the basic document. It is more likely to do that than whatever else I've come across, and it's a normal approach for a judge.
Are you worried about the attacks on the judiciary, about the independence of the judiciary?
The judiciary has had its ups and downs. No one attacked the judiciary more than Thomas Jefferson. I can remember when I was growing up that he impeached Earl Warren signs because the desegregation decision was very unpopular. I think courts ultimately, as John Marshall said, rest on the understanding of the public. He said the people made the Constitution, and the people can unmake it. It's very important that they understand it. And then, I think if they understand it, they would likely say, we want an independent judiciary.
We're about to enter into a new era on the court, and we're talking about how the law is living, the law has changed. As you look over your 11 years, and more expansively the tenure of Chief Justice Rehnquist, how has the law and the court changed over that time?
Hard for me to say because Justice Byron White said, well, with each new appointment, it's a new court. And I only know the one I'm on. I'm the last appointment. And why I say it's hard to say is because when I was first appointed, however I may have appeared, I was pretty nervous.
Why?
And why? Because I think the responsibility. I think that there's no one else to correct my mistakes, that I have to deal with 8 other people and with complicated legal problems, all of which are open, and I have to get them right as best I can.
Do you feel especially nervous when you know you're the 5th vote?
It's interesting. I think there is something to that. I think what happens when you're the 5th vote is you think, oh my goodness, I mean, you do anyway, you want to get it right, but I think you really want to be sure.
What does a judge do when he or she thinks they made the wrong call? Especially on those close cases.
It's very rare that you go back. It's a forward-looking job, as I said. You very rarely go back. And indeed, on the court, I would say that there are a couple of unsaid rules, but one is one case there's no bargaining between cases, and therefore it's a new day. Every case is a new day. The people, the groups of 5 or 4 or 8 or 1 will shift depending on the case. Each case stands on its own. And so we're always looking forward.
We're, as I said, on the verge of a new era here, and I'm going to ask you a question you may not want to answer, but that's your prerogative. Justice Ginsburg just last week said she doesn't like the idea of being the only woman on the court, and Justice O'Connor said flatly President Bush should appoint another woman on the court. First of all, do you agree with her? And secondly, if you don't want to address it that specifically, talk about the importance of diversity on the court.
When you ask about appointments, as you well know, what I often say, and it's totally true, I didn't appoint anyone. I didn't see it from the point of view of the appointing authority. I was the appointed person. So I say for me to talk about the appointment process is a little bit like seeing the recipe for chicken a la king from the point of view of the chicken. I can say one thing about diversity, which I've learned over time, and there are many, many kinds of diversity. Presidents don't get necessarily the judge they want. If they mean to appoint a judge whom they think will always decide in their favor, that doesn't happen. But probably they want persons of an outlook that they think is somewhat compatible with their own. Therefore, you end up with a court of people of different outlooks. That means sometimes there's a lot of disagreement. But that's good. That isn't bad, because we're a big country. And there are people of many different points of view, and it's helpful, not harmful, to have a court made up of people of diverse backgrounds, points of view, and so forth.
Finally, you will be working with Justice Roberts. Do you know him at all?
I've heard him argue, and he's been fine. I mean, very good.
But you've never worked with him.
No,
well, hearing him argue, I guess that's a way of working.
He's argued in the court. But,
you're 67 years old. You've been at the Supreme Court for 11 years. Mm-hmm. And when the court opens up tomorrow, you're still the junior justice.
Yes.
How does that feel?
I don't mind. I have one vote. Like everyone else, people listen to me. I listen to them.
And has the job of justice, looking back on the 11 years, been what you expected it to be?
I didn't have definite expectation. I think in a way it's more difficult, and in a way it's more challenging. It's time-consuming, and it absolutely requires a person to give forth whatever his best is on each of those cases. So it's always asking me to do my best. After 11 years, I somewhat settle down and think, I can't do better than my best.
But how's it more difficult than you expected? How's it more difficult than you expected?
I didn't realize that each of those cases, or almost all of them, is actually pretty difficult. It's like law. Law, I say, is related to life. And law is never easy. It's never easy. When you really get into it, you begin to see it's complicated. You begin to see even the most settled things are not so clear as you thought. It's always a challenge. And in this case, it's a challenge because, you have to have a heart, I say, and you have to have a head. And you have to be able to combine the two in law, and that's why I like that profession. But here, all these cases, almost all, call for you to give what you have to give. And it's a great privilege to have a job like that as you grow older. You just cannot let up, but that is an enormous privilege. I'm very lucky to have it.
And we're lucky to have you explain how you do that job today. Thank you very much. George Will, Terry Moran, and Linda Douglas are up next on the roundtable. And later, you just heard Justice Breyer on the Constitution. Lynn Cheney's take is coming up.
It is, I think, not too much of a stretch to call it a miracle.
The Verizon Fiber Optic Broadband Network.
Connecting more people
to gaming, video, music, and each other. My job?
My job. Make the network even stronger. Faster, more powerful.
With our growing team of experts, we're building the only large-scale, fully fiber optic network in America.
To deliver the next generation, phone, internet, and TV. I'm proud.
We're proud to be Verizon. Our people, our network.
You challenged everything that came before you, and nothing looked or felt or sounded the same way again. That was you then, and the great thing is, that's still you now. We are the personal advisors of Ameriprise Financial, the next generation of American Express financial advisors. Because a generation as unique as this needs a new generation of personal financial planning.
Commander-in-Chief is Tuesday's #1 new show.
Is she leading?
She's leading, all right.
And America is saluting its new first family.
You can be a real pain sometimes.
Yeah, and you're a virgin.
Tuesday,
She's a woman.
the real fight begins.
It's so easy to deal with women if you just remember they're not men.
And it's personal.
This ends right here.
Gina Davis takes charge. Donald Sutherland is superb. New Commander-in-Chief, followed by a new Boston Legal. Tuesday, 9/8 Central, only on ABC. Wednesday at 9/8 Central.
You're on a plane.
Flight 816.
For these survivors,
What's going to happen?
danger is everywhere. An all-new Lost. Then at 10/9 Central,
Your own daughter said she saw millions of lights.
a new force is gathering,
You gotta see this.
invading the lives of these families.
What's wrong? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You have to know.
I don't think you want to go after this one.
An all-new invasion. It all begins Wednesday at 9/8 Central, only on ABC.
This Week with George Stephanopoulos will continue in a moment, after this from our ABC stations.
Friday, 2020 takes on the Great American Real Estate Game. Do you know how to play? What's flipping? What's bluffing? Do you really need an agent? And can you build your dream house and stay out of the poor house? Friday, how to win in real estate, no matter how you play the game, on 2020.
The last two major storms really proved having two meteorologists is much better than having one.
We can just keep on top of things more so than anybody else in town, because while one person is doing the broadcasting, the other person is doing the forecasting.
When that's one person doing it, it's a lot harder to keep up with everything. And so between the two of us, nothing can get past us.
K2's Rhonda Shelby and Rod Hill, two meteorologists, one reason, weather where you live. K2 News, the difference is local.
Getting a great deal, waiting till later to pay for it, there's nothing better than that.
There's nothing like Furniture Row's anniversary savings event because absolutely nothing is expected from you. Just come in, shop, and take advantage of our pay nothing until 2008 finance offer. And when we say nothing, we mean no payments, no interest, and no money down. Pay absolutely nothing until 2008. Furniture Row Outlet's anniversary savings event. There's nothing better, but you better hurry. This offer ends soon. Martha, Monday at 3 on K2, the Spirit of the Northwest.
I will cooperate with the Securities and Exchange Commission and the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York to provide the information they need as quickly as possible. My only objective in selling the stock was to eliminate the appearance of a conflict of interest.
In an act of blatant political partisanship, a rogue district attorney in Travis County, Texas, named Ronnie Earl, charged me with one count of criminal conspiracy, a reckless charge wholly unsupported by the facts. This is one of the weakest, most baseless indictments in American history.
Both congressional leaders in the hot seat this week, Bill Frist for possibly improper stock sales and Tom DeLay indicted down in Texas for possibly evading campaign finance laws. We're going to talk about that with the roundtable. George Will is here as always. Also Terry Moran, White House correspondent, Linda Douglas from Capitol Hill. And let's begin, Linda, with Tom DeLay. You just heard him say it's a baseless charge. It was a pretty thin indictment. Ronnie Earl, that prosecutor, better have some witness that he isn't talking about, or it looks like this is going to be tough to prosecute.
Well, this is very tough to prosecute. Campaign finance violations are always difficult to prove. Conspiracies are always difficult to prove. There's a belief that he must have something that we don't know about. He didn't list any piece of evidence in the indictment.
Some witness in the room.
But, yeah, something like that. Some additional piece of evidence that hasn't surfaced. In the criminal, I mean, there was a civil trial about all this, too, and there is some evidence that showed DeLay was a little bit more involved in the operations than was known. But really what's going to happen here is a real focus on Tom DeLay once again at a time when the party really can't stand that, because there may well be very soon a House Ethics Committee investigation of his relationship with Jack Abramoff, the lobbyist. That's something the public can understand, and that's the peril that arises from this.
Tom DeLay was about as conspiratorial as a steamed calliope in all of this. He went back, and all of this began with a classic act of overreaching. That is the desire to redistrict in the middle of a 10-year period between the censuses. Now, if they had taken the corporate money, and that's what this is about, corporate money cannot go into Texas races. If they'd taken the corporate money and sent it directly to Washington, and Washington had then turned it around, it would have been legal. Instead, now the prosecutor has to say doing it indirectly makes it illegal. It's a hard case.
But meanwhile, it does take Tom DeLay, Terry, out of play. He's had to step aside, and he has been President Bush's sort of enforcer in the House as well on all of the close votes. How big a loss is it to the president?
He's the hammer. And there's no question he has helped the president quite a bit. The attitude of the White House is that this thing, right now, for the American public, they believe, is just more Washington bickering, and
it's a little wishful thinking.
It may well be, although they have a conviction that most Americans view most people in Washington as crooked anyway, and so there's no news in that.
He has been the hammer, and the people who feel hammered are House conservatives.
They showed that this week.
You go all the way back to him and Dennis Hastert, another loser this week, keeping the House vote open for 3 hours on the Medicare prescription drug entitlement, all the way up to the highway bill, capping it right before the indictment, DeLay saying we've wrung all the fat out of the federal budget, nothing else here. When you're pounded like this, as the conservatives feel, you either become flat like Bill Scalapini or you become angry. They became angry, and when Dennis Hastert said, well, we will replace, Grandly said, we will replace DeLay with, we will replace DeLay with Mr. Dreyer without a vote, the House said too much.
They did, but Tom DeLay still thinks, Linda, he can come back. And it seems like this is a game of beat the clock right now. He's going to press Ronnie Earl to get this trial done before December, because if he doesn't, these conservatives and others in the House have said, we're going to have new elections in January, you're not coming back.
Right, exactly. And I think there's certainly a sentiment that one hears expressed privately by many Republicans that there's a bit of delay fatigue that is set in now. This is a man who has driven through very successfully the Republican agenda, gotten through the president's tax cuts, held open the vote on Medicare, brought the Congress back on Palm Sunday to intervene in the Terry Schiavo case. I mean, he's had tremendous, from his view, political successes, but if he doesn't get this trial by December, if he doesn't discredit the prosecutor, which his allies are trying very hard to do, they're disseminating a lot of information to say that he's vain, he's having a film shot about his efforts. He's already tried to prosecute Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, and it didn't succeed at all. So if they can manage to portray the prosecutor as overreaching and self-aggrandizing, that's the one way that DeLay might come back, but most think he won't come back as leader.
Meanwhile, this is happening as we showed. Bill Frist is under investigation for these stock sales, although he put out some emails this week that showed that he was actually contemplating the sales long before they learned of these problems in the health, in HCA. And you have this Jack Abramoff investigation, which has reached even into the White House, at least the OMB, the top procurement official is going to be indicted this week, and this Karl Rove leak investigation, which came to the fore this week because Judy Miller, the New York Times reporter, finally cut a deal and was released from jail. Here's what she had to say.
I was a journalist doing my job, protecting my source until my source freed me to perform my civic duty to testify.
She said that, Terry, but there's an awful lot of evidence out there that she could have had this waiver, as many other reporters did months or even a year ago.
It is hard to puzzle out what Judy Miller was doing in jail when, as you point out, it's clear that the people she was talking to wanted her to talk. Her belief is that that was coerced, that they were not really free to release her, that they were being leaned on by the White House, and she wanted a personal release. She got it. She testified. This is another one of those stories that in an era of killer hurricanes, wars, gas prices, it's hard to say how much traction this is getting with people who have profound problems, profound anxieties about the direction of the country. And these rather traditional kind of Washington potential appearances of conflict of interest scandals, it's hard to say how much traction they're going to have.
She was in jail protecting a source on a story she didn't write to begin with. Second, if the source was Scooter Libby had a year ago...
Vice President's security advisor.
Right. He had a year ago given her a waiver. The question is, was he coerced to give it? He wrote her a letter a few weeks ago saying, I was not coerced, saying it several times. The coercion is postulated by one of her lawyers. The coercion is supposed to be that the president directed that everyone in the White House cooperate. That's hardly coercion.
And Terry makes the point, Linda, that this may not have traction. I agree, it probably doesn't have traction yet, but that's in part because the special prosecutor, Counsel Patrick Fitzgerald, has not finished his job. And what we do know is that two of the people that have gotten an awful lot of attention from the special prosecutor are Louis Libby, the vice president's top advisor, and Karl Rove, the president's top advisor. And I guess the question is, can they be indicted, either for leaking classified information improperly or somehow over the course of this investigation giving false statements, obstructing justice?
Well, there's a new theory which is emerging now that they could possibly find them to have cooperated in some kind of a conspiracy that had some sort of a criminal intent. There's been no evidence, at least made public in the media, that either Rove or Libby intentionally gave the name of an undercover agent in violation of the law to a reporter, or that they knew
meeting
that she was...
all of the conditions of this law.
Yeah, that was the crime. And as it happened, I had a conversation just by running into him at a coffee shop with Karl Rove, who again makes the same argument that Libby has made, which is that in the case of the other reporter, Matt Cooper, he had given this waiver, blanket waiver, throughout, and didn't understand what the reporter was fighting about to say that he hadn't given him a waiver.
He talked on the record about this?
It was just a conversation that we had. And the point, again, is the same White House line, which is that the White House officials have, from the beginning, told any reporter who thinks they were their source, you have my waiver to go ahead and talk about this. That's their position.
And Terry, the position at the White House has also been, even if no illegal activity is found, was that Karl Rove, Louis Libby were not involved in this in any way, shape, or form. That's what they had the White House press secretary say many times from the podium. Setting aside the issue of indictments, if Fitzgerald is able to show this involvement pretty explicitly, do you think the president will feel any political pressure?
I think they've already taken that hit. One of the things this investigation has done is lift up the rock of the administration's very disciplined media style. And you see these conversations between double super secret background conversations in which they're peddling this stuff in contravention, in direct contradiction to what the press secretary had told us on television to the American people. The president believes nobody had anything to do with this. Karl Rove had nothing to do with this. Boom. It turns out they are peddling it. Whether or not it's a crime, we've seen what's going on there, and I think they've probably already taken that hit.
Yeah, I mean, that's a political problem, not a legal problem.
Right, precisely.
It's definitely a political problem, but I wonder, George Will, do you think it's a manageable one for the White House, especially if we don't know whether Fitzgerald is going to write a report or have indictments, but if he is able to show, as a source close to this told me this week, that President Bush and Vice President Cheney were actually involved in some of these discussions.
I don't think writing a report is part of the prosecutor's job description. The grand jury that will speak on this decisively expires on October 28th. We'll know that.
Meanwhile, this all comes as we're all awaiting the president's choice for the next Supreme Court vacancy, Sandra Day O'Connor. And I know this is a perilous game because none of us knows who President Bush has in mind. We know a lot of different people are talked about up in the Senate. So I'm going to throw up one possible short list that includes Alberto Gonzales, the U.S. Attorney General, Harriet Miers, the White House counsel, Karen Williams, she's an appeals court judge out of South Carolina, Larry Thompson, Vice President General Counsel of PepsiCo, former Deputy Attorney General, and Maura Corrigan, the Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court. I stipulate that the list probably includes at least 10 other people and that none of those people may even be considered by the president. But, Terry, the conditions that the president faces. We know that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sandra Day O'Connor, and the First Lady have all said, you got to pick a woman. So is this a case of no white men need apply?
Just about. The president himself said in answer to a question recently, he's mindful of the value of diversity in American life and on the court. So they're almost signaling that they are looking for a woman or a minority. That was a very nice list. You could probably develop a different one because this White House has demonstrated again and again that there are about 5 or 6 people who know how this process is going, and they don't talk.
Never. And they actually may like to put out a little disinformation as well. We only have about 30 seconds left. Does anybody want to venture a prediction?
In my judgment, the vote for Roberts emboldened them. This person will be very satisfactory to the president's base of conservative.
And my prediction is that the Democrats may well filibuster anybody but Alberto Gonzales and Larry Thompson on the list.
And my prediction is the filibuster lasts a day, the nuclear option explodes, there are no more filibusters, and he gets whomever he nominates.
With John McCain leading the way. Thank you all very much. When we come back, the Sunday Funnies.
In a speech earlier this week, President Bush asked Americans to conserve gas by stopping non-essential travel. Yeah. Then the president flew to Hawaii to make the same speech.
Pollen, dust, dander, and now smog and ozone too. Exclusively from Sharper Image, the Ionic Breeze Silent Air Purifier with Ozone Guard that can actually convert smog and ozone into oxygen. Cleaning and circulating your air with no fans, no filters, silently. America's most trusted brand of air purifier introduces revolutionary new technology. Sharper Image, working with the Engelhard Corporation, inventors of the modern catalytic converter, introduces Ozone Guard with Premier Catalyst, recognized by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency as a newer way to reduce air pollution. In fact, the more polluted the incoming air, the more oxygen it helps generate. The Ionic Breeze charges incoming air and contaminants attached to the collection grid. Then the air passes through an additional cleaning stage in the new Ozone Guard grill with Premier Catalyst coating that instantly converts a significant portion of smog and ozone into pure oxygen. Then cleaner, fresher air is accelerated back into the room. The Ionic Breeze has earned the seal of the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America because it's been proven to reduce airborne allergens. Don't be confused with our noisy competitors. Even if they look the same, they don't have Ozone Guard. Only the Ionic Breeze has Ozone Guard to help instantly convert smog and ozone into oxygen.
I've tried every air purifier on the market today, and there's only one that meets everyone's needs, and that's the Ionic Breeze.
Order today and we'll give you a $69 bathroom Ionic Breeze and a $39 car Ionic Breeze. Try the Ionic Breeze with Ozone Guard for 2 months. And if you don't love it, send it back. But keep the bathroom and the car Ionic Breezes over a $100 value as a free gift. Call now and get a free 5-year warranty and ask about free shipping.
Call 1-800-433-4400. That's 1-800-433-4400.
As you can tell, the Constitution is on our minds these days. So our voice this week is Lynn Cheney. The Vice President's wife has spent much of her professional life encouraging Americans to learn more about our history. And our Constitution is one of her passions, too.
Our Constitution, of course, is a very old and venerable document. What the document did, and does to this day, is give us a mechanism for expanding the ideas that have so inspired the whole world, to expand those ideas so that they include everyone. I've done Constitution Day for 4 or 5 years now with George Washington, who's just spectacular.
And now those laws are so important to us.
Part of the reason kids don't study history as much as I'd like them to is because we're such a forward-looking people. You know, we're always thinking about tomorrow and not yesterday. So in a way, it's part of our culture. But it is important that we try to look back, because there are people in our history who have forced us to look back to the first principles of the Constitution and to see that they apply to everyone. So I love to tell kids about the people who were involved. Sometimes I tell them about how different life was then. You know, people were late. The Constitutional Convention started, I think it was 11 days late, because roads were so bad you couldn't count on being able to get across the creek. I've written for children a long time, but then when I had grandchildren, it seemed just a perfect way to talk to them about history, to write a book, you know. They're not going to absorb it by osmosis. We have to teach the upcoming generation about, you know, the great founding documents. And so freedom has been an effort from the beginning, and it will require our effort and the effort of upcoming generations for the United States to remain the great and free country that it is.
And after some history, the Sunday Funnies.
So large protest, tiny counter-protest, that should be the last word. No? No. Because yesterday came the counter-protest. Demonstrators gathered around the White House, including, yes, she's back, and Washington police converged swiftly on the group, which had no permit, and made Cindy Sheehan their first of hundreds of arrests. She's smiling. You know what? I don't think she's being arrested. I think a Jewish wedding just broke out.
And something really odd happened to the Pentagon the other day as Donald Rumsfeld was briefing the press. See, I don't think the Pentagon has very good security. I'm sorry to say this, but their security is not that good. Show what happened. Take a look.
For 4 decades, Dick Myers has served, and for the past 6 years, he's been a powerful presence in the Department of Defense.
week's Voices and Funnies, brought to you by J.P. Morgan Chase.
Like the fire, you place the flowers in the vase that you bought today.
It's time to get out, Dana. You just brush away.
Yeah, move over here.
Dana.
The bankers of J.P. Morgan Chase have committed $800 billion to strengthen minority and low-income communities.
Hey, Dana, come on, baby.
It's not just a financial commitment. It's a commitment to the American dream. J.P. Morgan Chase.
Can't read this. Can you read this?
I can't read this.
What's wrong with this?
It's in black and white.
Black and white's what's wrong with this?
Should be in color.
That is better. How'd you do that?
Xerox Color. It makes business sense.
I can get so congested from my allergies that I feel like I'm not all there. But I've still got to report the story. So I found Claritin D and got Claritin Clear. That means I'm getting non-drowsy relief and doing my job.
Come on, you're up.
If you want long-lasting relief from your worst congestion, sinus pressure, and itchy eyes without getting drowsy, nothing is stronger or faster than Claritin D. It's the one that works for my allergies and my life. Non-drowsy Claritin D. Live Claritin Clear.
Some of the best in the game tee it up in North Carolina and battle for their share of the $5 million purse. The Chrysler Classic of Greensboro. Today, 3 Eastern, noon Pacific on ABC Sports.
Monday. How do you like a job that lets you work when and where you please? All that matters, how well you get things done. Sound like a dream? Monday. The radical new experiment for working moms and dads. Find out what it's all about on World News Tonight.
Now, in memoriam.
This is Smart. Maxwell Smart, Agent 86. I've got imagination, ingenuity, and intelligence.
I was the character. I became the character.
Message of our culture is that we're here to be happy and fulfilled. I think that the meaning of life is that we're here to learn.
We plan to, in all pending cases, ask the court for orders immediately desegregating all of the schools.
This week, the Pentagon released the names of 29 service members killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. We'll be right back.
It was really dark. The road was icy.
It was really slippery.
We started swerving.
I thought we were going to roll over, but we didn't. It stopped us swerving and keep the car straight.
Who's going to help you stay in control?
When things are out of your control.
Someone should.
I fight a war that never stops. I work in infectious diseases at GlaxoSmithKline. You know how hard it is to find a new drug? Think of it this way. One of these snowflakes will fight one kind of infection and be safe enough for people to take. A scientist here could work through 1 million compounds and find only one new drug. And then we start again, because bacteria develop resistance and new viruses appear. The war never stops.
GlaxoSmithKline. Today's medicines finance tomorrow's miracles.
More than 61 million have made ABC Sunday their night of television.
It's one of my favorite things.
First, the inspiring story of a couple who opened their hearts to children in need.
The state won't let them adopt more kids unless they have a bigger house.
Now we'll build these parents a new house so more kids will have a place to call home. The Emmy Award-winning Extreme Makeover Home Edition, all new 8/7 Central. Then,
Did you spend the night with Eve?
a new season of TV's #1 series is just getting started with a whole lot of scandal, a whole lot of mystery.
I'm here to kidnap you.
Not to mention a whole lot of Emmys.
Wow.
An all-new Desperate Housewives, 9/8 Central.
You waited 2 months to tell me. You've got a life.
It's the hit show everyone's talking about.
You ruined me. I'm ruined. You turned me into this fat, stupid, pregnant girl.
An all-new Grey's Anatomy, 10/9 Central. TV's biggest night is back, and it's all new tonight, starting 8/7 Central, only on ABC.
Be sure to tune in next Sunday. We'll probably have President Bush's pick for the next Supreme Court slot by then. Plus, George Will interviews one of the fathers of the conservative movement, William F. Buckley. Thanks for sharing part of this Sunday with us. Until next week, that's This Week.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
ESPN Original Entertainment presents the story of a student who walked onto the track a man and left a legend. 4 minutes. Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2.
Getting a great deal, waiting till later to pay for it, there's nothing better than that.
There's nothing like Furniture Row's anniversary savings event because absolutely nothing is expected from you. Just come in, shop, and take advantage of our pay nothing until 2008 finance offer. And when we say nothing, we mean no payments, no interest, and no money down. Pay absolutely nothing until 2008. Furniture Row Outlet's anniversary savings event. There's nothing better, but you better hurry. This offer ends soon.
In the Garden with Mike Darcy, a gardening program for the seasons. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. We've reserved a front seat for those who believe in the art of gardening. In the Garden with Mike Darcy, Sunday mornings at 9 on K2. The Spirit of the Northwest, brought to you in part by Gardner and Bloom and Dr. Earth.